Okay, so let's get started, guys. Something about myself. So I'm Varun Kumar. I did my BTech Computer Science from IP University, Delhi. I am a 2010-2014 batch. Coming to my experience, I started my development career in June 2014, where I was an associate software developer in a company, a Dwarka-based company. Apart from like being in a regular job, there was a time where I was like a full-time freelancer for more than 2 years. So I quit my job and I was doing my own stuff. And it's only mostly because of this freelancer time that I got an opportunity to work with various technologies. And I had a free hand of in my whatever I wanted to learn and whatever I wanted to do. It's only because of this freelancing that I've worked with more than 20 plus clients right now, and I've completed more than 40 plus projects. Some of them were small, medium, and large also. So I've already worked on healthcare industry, technology, e-commerce, hotel, logistics, grooming, coaching and education, manufacturing, travel, customer support, and some other startups as well. So that's the part of my work experience. Coming to my technical skills, so I just wanted to keep it short. So I'm a full stack developer. In Crown Stack, I'm more focused on the backend only, but by skills, I'm full stack. In backend, I work with Laravel, which is a PHP framework, and Vue.js. I believe all of us know about Vue.js, right? Apart from that, I also do SEO, and I'm also good with digital analytics. Okay, so I think let's get started with this. What we are going to learn with this program. So firstly, we will begin to understand what actually cloud means. So we all have heard about cloud computing and all those things, like, okay, Cloud Pedaldo and all those things. So what exactly cloud means? Then what is the role of AWS in the cloud? What is the relationship between the two? We'll review many different types of services that AWS provides us. I'll tell most of them. Yeah. Then this is the basic thing that we are looking for. So we will be learning about the basics of the most famous AWS services like VPC, EC2, Lambda, Elastic IP, Beanstalk, EFS, S3, DynamoDB, all these things. So we will not get into too much technical details into it because those are already also planned, but not in this session. There will be more sessions after this session end where we will be touching most of these technologies individually so that we can go deeper into it. The purpose of doing this training program is that we don't feel like a noob when somebody is discussing about AWS in front of us, and we are aware of all these services because be it on this company or anywhere you work on, so AWS knowledge is very good to have. We'll also learn about how to achieve scalability. So creating an application, creating your website or the backend or anything is one thing, but managing it on cloud is a different thing. What I mean by managing is that, we all know like the big players in the market like Netflix, Facebook, Instagrams, all of these people have like millions of people accessing per second. So it's a huge technology running behind to make it scalable so that even if there is just one person or millions of users, the application should work. So how do we achieve scalability in AWS? We'll discuss about that, and how to architect your own project so that you can get benefit from AWS. We'll talk about that as well, and some of the best practices that will follow along this course. Some best practices which I recommend that yes we should follow so that you are good with the development and your code is much more fitting with the AWS. Okay, any questions over here? If you have any questions, so please you can stop me anywhere and we can discuss all those, right? Okay, now let's try to understand what cloud actually means. So any one of you would want to like share their thoughts on the cloud, like what do you understand by cloud? Anyone want to speak on that? No, I think. Okay, we'll do this. Okay, so what is cloud actually means? Cloud is nothing, guys. Basically, it's a network of servers that anybody can access on the internet. Okay, so basically, we have big servers in a one particular location, and we call it as a cloud. Why cloud? Because we can access it from anywhere in the world using internet only. So these servers are basically spread around all over the world. Like, for example, I'll just show you. So these are the data centers of AWS. So they have like many places where they have placed their servers. So these servers combined together form the cloud network for AWS. Right? So this is basically important point, right? So these servers runs a visualization software. This visualization software is able to simulate virtual computers inside it. So whenever we create our account on Amazon and we request for a server, so basically what happens is that we are getting a virtual computer into it. I think we know this, but yes, again, just to start with it. So yes, there is one big server, but there is a virtualization software that is running inside it, that on demand it creates virtual servers for you, right? Each of these virtual computers have their own virtual hardware. So if you have allocated 2 GB RAM, 1 GB RAM, that is only dedicated to you. So there is no separate RAM as together, but the virtualization software keeps keeps your RAM isolated with other virtual computers. So all these virtual computers don't interact with each other, and all the files and applications of your computer will not be visible to other computer, even if they are on the same physical server. So the physical server is the same for all, but yes, so logically they are separated from each other. And why do we need to create these virtual computers? We do this because AWS provides us many services that we can run on these computers. Some of the example of these services are like web hosting, databases, CDN, analytics, Internet of Things, DevOps, Dockers, machine learning, containers, and many more services are being provided over here by the cloud. Is this right, guys? Okay. Any doubts or anything you want to continue with? Like anything you want to ask in this slide, or like if you didn't get anything, so you can ask me. No. Okay. Yeah, this is actually basic thing. We all know this, but okay. Then so it's so just as we mentioned that it's a network of servers. So similarly, how AWS does it, so they have their own data centers in all around the world. There is one in India, set up in India, and the red ones are coming soon ones. If you want to see all these structures, so I've added this link on the bottom of the slide. You can go to this page and you can actually see those servers around it. Alright. So this is just a small visualization how these servers are there and how the virtual computers are being created in Amazon. So suppose you are in a data center, let's say the Indian data center, which is in Bangalore, right? So there are server computers over there. So if you just go on Google and you want to ask like cloud servers, sorry. So I know you have already done this, right? So you have seen all these kind of pictures over here. So these are basically the physical servers that they have. A very large array of servers are there, which together combined are called a data center, right? So suppose there is a server, a machine is there inside this. So the visualization software is getting running, and suppose we are like 7 people here. Suppose we need 7 computers into it, 7 EC2 servers. So we can ask that Amazon software to create 7. So it virtually creates 7 computers inside the main server only, right? And we all get our own individual servers. Apart from our individual servers, apart from our individual computers that we have, these data centers also have some common servers. Like they have edge servers, which is used for CDN purposes. They have DNS servers, which are used for DNS routing and the DNS related activities. In the brackets I have mentioned which AWS services is primarily associated with it. So with CDN, so they have AWS has AWS CloudFront. That is the CDN service from AWS. Then for DNS we have Route 53. Amazon also provides us mail servers. So there are two kind of mail services. One is the Amazon SES, which is used to send application emails to your customers. And there is also a AWS Workmail, which is so like in CrowdStrike we use the G Suite email. So similarly, AWS also has a Workmail, which is the email solution for the people. Right. Then there are shared compute servers on which AWS Lambda runs. We'll talk about AWS Lambda later in the code. Okay. And just why do we need the cloud computing basically? So the first reason is that you get all the technologies that you want right at your fingertips. Right. Scalability is a very good advantage because all these data servers are very large. So even if your size, like your application size is growing, they don't care. They have the space to give you more space always. It saves your cost because you don't have to set up your own servers. You save because they are setting their own servers and you are just opting for the services that you need. Plus, once launched, your applications are like available globally within minutes. So that is the benefit of why somebody would opt for cloud computing. Right. Okay. So I think let's get practical into it. So the official website for AWS, which we all know, like aws.amazon.com. So the first thing that we do is to create our account. So suppose you want to create your account, so you will just go to this website and sign up. So if I go here on the top right side, we see create an AWS account, which is very simple process to do. So you just go over there. And okay, so you'll see a very simple sign up form over here, like your email address, your password, and your account name. I already have an account with me, but let's create one more account. So anybody of you has an email address which is not registered with AWS? Can I have an email address? Like anyone? Okay, you have. Okay, you also have. Okay. Is there anyone who has not created their account on AWS? Okay, we have one. Okay. Okay, Sai, so can you please tell us your email address? You won't be charged for anything. It's a free sign up and you don't need to worry about anything. Right. Can you please share your email address? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, okay. So just simple things, and password I'll give you, Sai, after this call, like what the password is. Okay, so we can just continue with it, and just as CAPTCHA, I'll start with it. Okay. Then this onboarding will begin. So this is some basic onboarding that will happen. So I've already done this, so I have my screenshots to share with you guys. So we don't need to fill this up. So this is going to be the step number 1, which is where they will ask your contact information, which is fine. You all know this. There is nothing to discuss on this, but just wanted to highlight this. On step number 2, they will, okay. On step number 2, they ask for your card because it's a paid service. So on step number 2, we need to add a card. But right now we won't use any card. So that's fine. After adding your card, step number 3 will come. Is that where they will confirm your identity by sending an OTP on your phone number. And finally, they will ask you what kind of support plan do you need. So support plan is something the tech the tech support that you need. If you are a developer, so most of us opt for the free plan where we don't need any kind of support, but we have seen clients in CrownStack that opt for like developer plan also. So my client has the developer plan, right? Okay, so that's a very simple process of onboarding. When you are done with it, you will be given a welcome email where you can see that welcome email, but that's fine, we're not going to into it. But suppose your onboarding is complete. Now when you log in into your console, so just as we log in into the console, so basically this is called AWS Management Console, right? This is the term it uses. So this is the home page of that, where we see some complex things over here. All the AWS services are divided from here, like the compute services, storage services, database services, migration, all those, the networking services, media services, and all those things. So whatever service you want to use, you can just search for that service and you will be able to jump to that particular service, which is fine. Okay, now let's come to the very crucial part right now. The very crucial part is about the billing. This is something that we don't discuss very often. We as developers, we always have the habit of just going into the coding part and the server part. But I wanted to start this session with the discussing the billing right now. Okay, some cases I have. I'll show these two cases with you. What happens is that when we don't use our AWS account with our eyes open and we are not alert, what happens is that we can get very huge charge. So this is actually a forum. If you see this, what this guy is asking for is that I set up AWS web service account a long time back. The system is so complicated, I need to try and learn. Somehow I started a EC2 slot, but I never used it. By the end of month, I got a bill of $372. So $372 will be around like monthly billing. So that's around 28,000 rupees per month. So he was just not aware that what he did in AWS, he just considered that it's cool to play with. He got this kind of thing, and AWS will not show any mercy on you. So we have to make sure that whatever we are using in AWS, we are conscious about it. We don't opt for anything that will cost you, like, I've even seen bills of like lakh rupees, like 1.2 lakh rupees. Monthly bills are also there, but they were not mistake. They were actually the costing that was the real costing that they were had to pay. One more example is here, like one more person is there and expected very high bill from AWS, which is again they are asking, they are requesting to please release the charge. We didn't knew what we are doing. So that is the basic topic I wanted to discuss you about before we begin with anything, right? So we should know that we need to save ourselves from unexpected charges. When AWS can surprise you with a spiking invoice when you are not paying attention to which services you are using and what are their charges. That is a big mistake that we do. We opt for things, but we don't know how much it is charging. And if your account credentials get compromised, so some developers are there who are looking for these compromised credentials around the internet. They will use your credentials and they will exploit your card in a very good manner, right? So what do I mean by not paying attention to services is that, let's come to the RDS point. So this is basically the database service which Amazon provides. So if you try to set up an RDS instance, they show you the costing, like how much you will be like how much this will be charged. So need to see this very clearly. If I just go down onto the bottom of this page, right now, okay, it will show us the cost that we have to pay. So wanted to highlight this very serious concern right now. So Okay, how you can avoid it? That's very simple. You can go to, first way to avoid it is that be mindful of what you are opting. So one of my client uses Comprehend. It's a Amazon service in which you give it a text and it gives you back the emotion of that text. So there is this Amazon Comprehend there, and plus there is also Amazon Comprehend Medical. So Amazon Comprehend is very cheap to use, but Amazon Comprehend Medical is 10 times more costlier than the Amazon Comprehend. So if by mistake if you opted in for Amazon, the medical part of it, your billing will be very high. So be mindful of what you are opting for. Don't be in a rush. Take out your time to study about what you are going to use. Then how you can save yourself is so when you are in the dashboard, you can go and inside your name, and you can go into your billing dashboard. When you go in your billing dashboard, you will see a Cost Explorer. Cost Explorer is something whenever you are charged by AWS, they give you the whole details. Why are you being charged for this? Suppose if you received a monthly bill of like what you never expected it to be, so you can come to the Cost Explorer, you can find out why am I being charged for this much. My account does not have anything, but I am going to show you one of my client accounts, like how this Cost Explorer is working and how you should utilize this. Because even if you are working for a client, he may ask you in future that, hey, you know what, my bill came out to be very large, and this has happened with us also. So Abhishek have seen it. So Abhishek, you remember so there was a time when Tarun messaged us that this cost is going very high. So we turned off some things because again the awareness, we were not very aware of what we were using, and we created some servers but we never switched them off. So the client was paying for it. So he asked us like, why am I being charged for this one? So mm-hmm. Yes. Hmm. Be aware of what we are using. So if you see, this is the database cost and the EC2 are the server cost. So if you see, so even more than the database cost is almost equal to the server cost, which is quite huge, right? So if you come to an actual dashboard which uses something, so this is the dashboard that we see over here. The Amazon shows you the last month charges, this month charge till today's date, and what is the forecast. So if you see, Amazon is already forecasting that your January forecast will be about $410, and if you just convert this price into your like INR na, so this is actually quite huge. So this is going to be 30,000 rupees per month, which is very huge. We all know this, right? So be aware of that. So this is the billing dashboard that we have. They give you a small summary of your how much you are being charged for what. And so this is the Cost Explorer, which I was explaining over here. To use your AWS Cost Explorer to know exactly why are you being charged. So if you go to the Cost Explorer and you just hit this launch thing, so this will give you a dashboard. This is a kind of a reporting dashboard. It will give you all the whole distribution of the whole thing. Right. I'll just show you. So this is the Cost Explorer, uh, and I've grouped it by service. So So you can group by service by clicking on this account. So you will see that these are the services which we are using, and this is the costing that we are paying. So coming to October, so you will see a spiking charge over here. So Cost Explorer is very useful to capture it out, like why my October cost went out too big, right? So client paid more than $1,000 on the month of October, which is out of our budget. But yeah, he paid for it because he's using some kind of those services. So he's using Amazon Registrar. That's another service from AWS, but that's fine. We are not discussing on that. So it gives you a distribution of all these charges. If you highlight on it, so client paid $110 for RDS. Then he paid about $87 for load balancer. He paid $87 for EC2 instances. And he's also using Workmail for it. So he's paying $40 for the email service that he's using. So you can use Cost Explorer to just debug. This is for basically the debugging purpose. Why are you being charged? Right? That is one way to save yourself. The other very bad thing that we do, and I have seen it in CrownStack and I have seen it everywhere, this is more common with the backend developers. Never mention your AWS credentials in your code. Always put them in your .env files and create a .env.example files with dummy values. I'll show you an example of that. Just a minute. So this is from one of our own projects, Community X, and this is a very, very past commit. So basically this is from 25th of June 2020, a long time back, right? So if you see this repository, you will find out that we have this env.dev file, which is basically the environmental variable file. So what the developer did is that they exposed the API key and some AWS credentials inside the GitHub repository. That is something that you should never do, because if some hacker finds out your keys, that's it. He will be definitely misusing that. And one such example of that misuse I'll show you in my client account. Just a second. So we received an email from Amazon in February 2020 that your AWS account might have been compromised. Why? Your security is important to us. We have detected abnormal activity in your AWS account that matches pattern of unauthorized access. The activity is related to your AWS access key, right? So this is a key, a credential, which I am just talking about over here. Don't put your AWS credentials in your .env files. Never put them, right? So we left. So I didn't left that. It's from the. This is our client, but this project was not done by me. It was by their own developer, which is out of CrownStack, which may indicate that this access key and the corresponding secret key are compromised. So they temporarily blocked my client's AWS account completely. All of our services went down. All the websites and all those services that we were using went down because somebody hacked their GitHub repo. They found out some keys that they should not know and they misused it. So always be aware of that. If you are using this in your code, it's high time you should not do it. How we do it, I'll tell you. How we do it is like this. So this is our project, like our Laravel project. So even here we have the .env.example file. Over here we tell the dummy values over here. We don't expose the real values, right? And in the real so whenever we are coding the project, we create a copy of the .env.example file that should store the actual values, right? So all your keys should be in the .env file, but don't commit them. I'll share you an article how to do it. So do have a look into it. Never expose your AWS credentials in your code. Okay. Then another way to save yourself from unexpected charges is to create AWS budget. So AWS, this billing dashboard gives you a facility to create a budget over here. What it does is that I'll just show you. How do you go into it? You click on your name, you go into your My Billing dashboard, and you go into the budgets side over here. So right now we don't have any budget, which is fine. You can create a new budget. When you do it, it will ask you what kind of budget you are looking for. So mostly we will be looking for cost budgets, but once you are in your AWS console, you can explore more into it, but we'll be focusing on the cost budget right now. Right. So what it does is that monitor your costs against a specific amount and receive alerts when your user defined thresholds are met. I'll show you. So suppose we have a limit of, let's say, $20 a month. Right. So you can give a name over here, monthly budget. Right. What is the period of this budget? By ideally it should be monthly, but yes, you can define it according to what. Recurring budget is that it will occur every month, and expiring budget is only for a particular time month that you want to apply this budget only for a limited number of a limited time window. Let's assume that it's a recurring budget. Then you need to specify what is your monthly budget. Is it fixed, or it is fixed for every month, or for different months you have different budget. So if you have different budgets for different months, you can enter your budgets for each and every month. Let's suppose fixed, and suppose our monthly budget is $50. So that we don't face any situation where we have 20,000 rupees to pay to Amazon. So let's say your budget amount is $50. You don't want to spend beyond that. Right. So you can tell us, you can tell Amazon, like, this is my cap. Don't do anything above that. So configure the threshold. The next step will be to configure the threshold. So what is a threshold basically? Threshold is the rule that you will define. When this rule becomes true, Amazon will alert you. Right. What is the rule? Like, the rule is that alert me, like, actual cost. If my Amazon monthly billing cost is going above than 80% of my budgeted amount. So my budgeted amount was for I think the budgeted amount was $50. So the rule which I'm setting right now is that if my budget, if my monthly cost has reached 80%, so do what? Trigger me an email. So you can write down your email addresses over here. Multiple email addresses are possible. So you can tell Amazon to trigger me an email if my actual cost have reached $40 out of $50. So Amazon will alert you immediately. Now it's your responsibility to keep checking your emails so that you don't skip this thing, because even if you have crossed your budget, Amazon will not stop billing. It will continue to bill you. It won't stop, right? So you need to be sure of that. Then if the actual cost is, you can tell it a percentage, or you can give it an absolute value, which is like $49, right? So on that you can configure Amazon to do it, and you can add multiple rules also. If you suppose you have one more rule, like, okay, my first rule says either actual cost reaches $49 or my actual cost is about 50% of my budget, then also you can trigger those things, right? So you can configure all those thresholds and confirm your budget. When you do this, okay, it is asking for at least one email to alert. So when you do it, confirm your budget. So this is a summary before you actually create a budget. So you can just go through the summary and just create this budget. So budget won't cost you anything. So you can create as many budgets as you want, but do create them for clients at least. My client does not have it because I didn't create his budget, because I don't have the access of it. Like, I don't have the complete access of this account, and particularly I don't have the budget access as well. But that's fine. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight before we do anything technical, which is regarding the budgeting thing. Okay. And one more thing, rotate your IAM keys. So what happens is that I'll tell you an example. So in one of the applications that we are coding right now, so we have a project Community X. So in Community X, we are using Amazon SES. Amazon SES. So anybody know what Amazon SES is? Right, excluding Abhishek, because of Abhishek knows that. Anyone else knows Amazon SES before? Right. Okay. So yes, Amazon SES is our email service from Amazon. So we are using this service in our project. So to use Amazon SES in your code, you need to give it credential. What kind of credentials? So Amazon has a specific place which is called IAM. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. We'll go into IAM also, but not in this session, in some later session. So if you need to give automatic access to some code to your AWS account, you can create IAM role for that. So this is from my client side. So even for this client whose dashboard I am showing, we created, so we are using Amazon SES for this client. So to use that, we created an Amazon user, an IAM user over here, and which is this user, the Amazon, this SES SMTP, this thing basically. So what happens, you can create a user, and Amazon will give you a key file, like a key ID and a key secret. What you will do with that, you can access Amazon services using this key ID and this key secret. So for Amazon SES, we are having these keys over here, like in our code. So, which is fine. This is required. But what I am saying here is that, so suppose if your IAM user is now not being used, if you're not using it, if your application has gone down and you don't need this user, you should delete this user whenever you know that, okay, I'm not using it. Because if somebody has the security credentials for this account, he can misuse it. That's what exactly happened on this case. The earlier developer had this access key ID and the client and the secret. So the Amazon does not show you the secret like this on this console, but he had the secret and his key ID, and he wrote some script which Amazon find that, okay, this is not a regular behavior of this particular IAM user, and he blocked our account. So to save yourself from unexpected charges, delete all those IAM accounts that you don't use. If you know that, yes, I'll not use it afterwards. And if possible, rotate their keys. So what do I mean by rotate? The rotation of keys is that, so if you go into the security credentials tab, these are the keys that Amazon gives for programmatic access. So rotating means creating new access keys, which I am just doing right now. When you create a new access key, it will give you the access key ID and the key secret, basically. So basically these are the ID password kind of thing to use this account for your Amazon. When you create a new key, delete the older key, or at least make it inactive. So that is meant by rotating your keys. So keep rotating your keys whenever you think you should, so that your AWS account is at least secure for that much. Okay. So that's all about I wanted to discuss about the billing part to begin anything else. Now coming to free tier service that Amazon provides. So okay. So whenever you sign up on AWS, guys, so AWS provides you some free services so that you try out AWS. Amazon call these free services as free tier, right? So you can just go on this free tier page. So whenever you sign up, you get these free tier things, right? So gain free hands-on experience with Amazon platform. without paying anything. But yes, you need to add your card details to start using, but those card details won't be used if you are working with the free tier things. So Amazon provides you three kind of free services. First kind of services are which will be always be free. There are some services which are Amazon provides free of cost forever. There are some services which Amazon tells that you can use it for 12 months. After the 12 months, from 13 months, we will start charging you. And there is a trial services. So trial services are only limited for a time being. Once you cross that time being, Amazon will start billing you. So you can check on this page, the Amazon free tier page, to exactly know what do you get for free tier. So let's say we are looking for the services which Amazon provides for the first 12 months. So Amazon provides you EC2 servers for 750 hours in a month. In a year. You get 5 GB of free storage from Amazon S3 for 12 months. From the beginning, the starting 12 months. For database, Amazon provides you 750 hours of database for 12 months in Amazon RDS. Similarly, you can find out like what are you getting. So I am using Amazon Comprehend in one of my projects. So Amazon Comprehend is also like 50,000 API text. So basically 50,000 words Amazon provides free to me for 12 months. And there are a lot of services. So you can filter out those services by what kind of service you are looking for. If you are looking for database, if you want to know that what Amazon is providing me for 12 months in database, so you can check out over here like database. Okay, I'm getting Amazon RDS for 12 months. If you're looking for servers, so tick these two things up. So you're getting Amazon EC2. You are getting load balancer free for 750 hours, and you are getting ECR. So this is basically related to the Docker. So you are getting 500 MB of Docker space free. So do check out on this. There are some free services which will always be free, like DynamoDB. So this is basically the NoSQL for Amazon. So like the Node.js developers or anyone who is using NoSQL, you can check it out. Like Amazon provides you 25 GB of free storage for NoSQL database. Amazon Lambda is the serverless technique, and we will be discussing it in the next chapters. So we are getting Amazon Lambda also, always free, up to 1 million requests per month. SNS, CloudWatch, Cognito and all those things. Amazon Glacier, Amazon SES. Yeah, Amazon SES is the email sending service. So we are getting 62,000 free emails from Amazon every month. So we don't need to pay anything for Amazon SES for the first 62. This is the primary reason I always recommend my clients to go for Amazon SES, because they always land up with some paid service where they are paying for emails. But I tell them, okay, Amazon already provides you all these things free of cost, so do use them, right? So once you are starting with your AWS journey, do come to this page and just review this up, right? What do you get free, right? Okay. So okay, any doubts, any discussion topics, anything I need to like discuss more on this page, or any other things that we discussed? Any questions or anything you guys want to ask? Okay. हाँ, okay, उसके बारे में चलो बात करते हैं. Okay, so yes, so I recommend that don't put your .env file into your repo. Instead, put a .env.example file. So what we do is that we have a gitignore file over here, and we ignore our .env file, right? So this won't be committed into it, but we create an alternate file for it, which is like .env.example. Where we store all the variables over here on the left hand side, and we give dummy values on the right hand side, right? And as part of installation instructions, we tell our clients that to create so whenever you are installing your project into a new machine, so copy this .env.example file into a .env file, right? And in that .env file, configure all your environmental variables over there. Don't put your credentials on the .env file. Okay, is that right? Vinay, you got that? Or yeah. So put your .env file in git ignore, but create a .env.example file which will not be ignored. So this has a headache also, that if suppose if you are having some new environmental variables coming in, so you need to update it on .env also and .env.example also. But this is a really good thing to do. PartRunner, when we started working on it, so even when we cloned the PartRunner repository, Vinay, so this is the Tarun's repository for PartRunner. If you see this, so even Tarun did it like that. So in his in his repository, he was having all those credentials committed in the GitHub repo, like all. So I have this his Stripe credentials, I have his Twilio credentials, I have his Google Analytics, which I don't need, but yes, okay, that's fine. Routifix, so Routifix is a very highly paid service. So if I know all these credentials, he's doomed. It won't charge me anything, but I can exploit him till like very much. I can exploit him. So this was one of the mistakes that even Tarun did, our client. He didn't do anything like this, but we do it. So whenever we do it, we never commit the .env file. And I've also seen one more design over here. I'll show you. The other bad design for your .env like the environmental configuration can be seen on this thing. Just a minute. Yeah. So this is another repository. Unfortunately, this was created by our own team members. But the mistake I'll show you. So this project does not have any .env file. It is even worse. So what they did is that they have this module file over here. And for every environment that you have, they are configuring it like this. So only one file is there. They like all the credentials, or like you see the auth token is exposed over here. This is really bad, this auth token. So it depends on me how I can exploit this, but the developer mentioned the auth token over here. They don't even maintain the .env file. I'll highly recommend you should maintain the .env file. You should not have only one file for configuration management. For different environments have different .env files, right? But that's how they did, right? And this is really bad. Even if this code is commented, but I can still come into it. Like, so this is suppose this is the dev server configuration, this is the QA server configuration, this is the staging server, and this is the production server. If you're storing all these files in one single file, you are even making a bigger mistake. At least in .env.example, you were only exposing one environmental configuration, not all. But if you are doing like this, you are exposing all your environments to us, to a bad guy. So don't do like this, and follow like this, like the .env.example kind of thing. That's my recommendation. That's how we do it, and highly recommend it for everyone to adopt it. Okay, any other points, any other questions we have right now? Yeah, I think not, right? Okay, so that was for our first session. That was the curriculum that I wanted to cover in this first session. Till we are only left with 7 minutes, so that's what I wanted to discuss in this thing. What is going to be in the next session, I'll tell you. So in the next session, we will actually see how these big companies architect their applications so that their applications are scalable. So let's come to the question, what is scalability? Does anybody know what is scalability? Can anybody define what do they understand by scalability of an application? Hmm. Exactly. So suppose I'll take an example of a shop, like an offline shop. Suppose you own a shop which has a space of, let's say, 20 people at a time. Scalability means your shop should be able to handle 200 clients also and 2000 clients also if they come concurrently, right? So creating an application is one thing, but deploying it on AWS so that even if 10 lakh users are also there at a particular instant, they should be able to use your services, right? They should not be blocked. And a good example of that is the NCRT, the CBSE website. We all have experienced that on the result declaration day, their servers go down. And that is the basic reason why their servers go down, because their server can only, so virtually any server has a limitation of how many requests it can handle, right? So if more users will come, which is beyond the maximum limit of the server, the server will crash up, right? And we have seen this also. Like, so you might have remembered, like a few days back, even Slack went down, right? So they had the server error, and like 2-3 months, like I think 2-3 weeks back, even Google went down. So what happened over there? That was a scalability issue. Something went wrong in their infrastructure, that their server crashed, and when their server crashed, all their customers were facing the issues. So what's there in the scalability? So that's be coming into our the next session that we will have next Sunday, which is how to architect your AWS to achieve scalability. So even if you have 10 lakh of users, your application should not go down. How do you architect your things? Like, one more example I'll give, like for part runner, we have a front end, we have a back end, then we have a database, we have emails, we have SMS, we have Slack in it, right? And a lot of things are also there, like we have file storage also, like people come and upload their files. If we do everything in one single server, the one day will happen when the server will crash. Why? Because either the file upload will consume all the memory, or your database will consume all the memory and will crash out. Or suppose your backend is running a cron job, it's running a script which is taking, let's say, 15-20 seconds. In that time being, suppose your server is holding on to like all the connection that is having, or your front end requests are very high. Suppose some bots are running in the web and they are accessing your front end website too much. So if you do everything on one single server, your application, high chances are that your application will crash. And suppose if your server crashed, very much possibility is that all your file uploads will go out, like because the server has crashed. So you will not have access to your database, you will not have access to all the user uploaded files. All the emails that you have sent, there might be some emails that are very crucial to go for the customer. They may get hold of, and you may be totally helpless and you cannot do anything about it. So scalability is architecting your application so that your application is distributed across multiple servers, across multiple AWS services. Like which services? That's what we talked about, right? So Amazon provides you all these services, like server for hosting, they provide you databases, They provide you CDN so that if you have a platform like if you are creating a social media platform, so you can use CDN so that all your media files that people are uploading, they can be served via CDN. If you serve your file using your server, so your server will be busy delivering those videos and delivering those images. So when will it do the backend job, right? So as the application is getting developed, architecting it right on AWS is also required. So the next agenda of our next week's discussion will be primarily on AWS, where I will be giving you examples of some big companies, how they have architected their AWS. One of the part that you have seen is on the Slack. If you have seen this, like what Ravi shared a diagram over here, I'll just show you. Like on general group, he shared something. Okay, where is it? Yeah. Oh, no, it's not here. Oh, yeah, here it is. So this is how Netflix is architecting their cloud, right? So they don't do it on one single server. They have their load balancers, and they are also using AWS. So they are using their load balancers. They have API gateways. They have this is their database. So all of these are separate. They architected so that even if one part fail, not everything should not fail, right? If this fails, so basically that's how they do it, and we'll get more into details of it, right? So we have some good examples coming next week from some different companies which you have heard of, how they architect their AWS, and we will also learn from them how we should architect, because someday or the other you might already be leading some projects, or you might be leading some projects in the near future. So when you are leading that project, it's your responsibility to not just create the application, to also maintain it on the cloud. So that will be next week's agenda. Okay. So very soon I will be sharing some reference notes, not today, but yes, in the upcoming week. These are some good articles to read. You should read about them. Okay, so I think that's all from my side for now. Anybody has any questions or doubts, so we can discuss them. Yeah. Not right now. Okay, that's fine. If not, then okay. I think yeah, that's all for this session, and we'll continue this session on next Sunday. Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you for your time. Thanks. Bye.